Can Khalil Rountree beat Alex Pereira? No. I'm only joking, guys, but let's not pretend that he doesn't have a massive uphill battle ahead of him. Alex Pereira is a huge favourite for a reason, but in this video we're going to be looking at a few potential openings for Khalil Rountree, maybe areas that he can expose, but I do want to give a disclaimer first. These are things that I've identified and others have identified in Alex Pereira's game that could be exploited, but at the same time, no one other than Adesanya, kind of, in their second fight, has exploited them already. I'm not claiming to be an expert, but we are going to look at a few things that Alex Pereira does where Rountree could potentially see some success. If I'm being completely honest, I do agree that Pereira is quite rightly the favourite heading into this fight. However, like I said, in this video we're going to look at Rountree's potential paths to victory, and then we'll finish the video with how I think it's really going to go down. So the first thing that I want to look at is Alex Pereira's most effective weapon. And no, it's not the left hook, it's that calf kick. There's absolutely no telegraph on it. It's so damaging, so effective. We saw Jan Blachowicz, who is generally very durable when it comes to leg kicks. I remember him going shin to shin with Magomed Ankalaev, and he was just completely unperturbed. However, Poatan saw loads of success against him with that leg kick. But I don't necessarily think it's going to be as effective against Khalil Rountree. The reason it's so effective is because it does inhibit the movement of the opponent and allows him to set up that strikes, including that left hook, which we will be getting onto later. But it's so effective because it slows opponents down, it makes their movement less effective, and he can just get off any strikes that he wants. The reason why I don't think it's going to be quite as effective against Khalil Rountree is because of his famous Muay Thai stance. Now, remember the fight where he fought Eric Anders, and the commentary team were absolutely loving this Bangkok version of Khalil Rountree. He was super light on the front foot, really dynamic with his striking, and he put on a Muay Thai masterclass in that fight. Now, I mentioned that light front leg, and that's really important here. Pereira sees loads of success against fighters like Jamal Hill, Jan Blachowicz, and even Izzy to an extent, who are quite heavy on that front leg. That front leg's there, it's planted, it's harder to get it out of the way. Adesanya did get it out of the way on occasion by slipping back, but in general it's much harder to check a kick when you're heavy on that front leg. Because Rountree's light and he bounces that front leg up and down, he's able to get it out the way more, occasionally check a kick, hopefully in his case, but realistically he's not going to get caught heavy on that front foot as often as the other fighters. Now, not only does this mean that his calf or his leg isn't going to be affected, it also means that Pereira's going to have to do more work, do different work to set up his big left hook, and this is important. If Rountree can deny the leg kick, that'll be a huge factor in this fight and could really aid him later on. And also, bearing in mind that this fight is at altitude, think how important that could be. If Pereira's plan is generally to chop that lead leg early to slow his opponents down, if he's unable to do that, and it does go into the later rounds, look, I am sort of fictionalising here what ifs, what could happen, but that's what we're doing in this video anyway. But really, avoiding this lead leg kick is super important for anyone against Alex Pereira, and with Khalil Rountree's stance, he does have a better opportunity than anyone else at doing this. We also saw Israel Adesanya throwing some nice counters when Pereira went for the leg kick. This is really important for Rountree. If he can avoid taking damage from these leg kicks and fire something back whilst Pereira's hands are low, he could see some success. Again, Pereira's seen success with his leg kicks against the very best kickboxers in the world. However, if Rountree does want to see success in this fight, he needs to not let that leg kick become a determining factor. If Pereira starts to time the leg kick, starts doing damage with it, especially early, it could be a very, very bad night for Rountree. The next thing that I want to talk about is Alex Pereira's left hook. Now, this is the shot that everyone knows about, everyone talks about, the ultimate equaliser. We've seen so many people slept by this left hook. Jamal Hill, Sean Strickland, Israel Adesanya, it was one of the shots that put him out in their first fight. It's just not one of those shots you can afford to get hit by 2 or 3 times in a fight before you adapt. You just don't have that luxury. And Khalil Rountree definitely will not have that luxury in this fight. We've seen Pereira's power has carried upwards. It'll probably carry up to heavyweight should he go there. So Rountree really needs to deal with the shot, avoid taking this shot if he wants to win this fight. There are many ways to avoid the left hook, but there's a couple of things that I think Rountree needs to do in this fight to avoid it being an issue at all. Firstly, it's avoid throwing the big overhand right. And this is a shot that Rountree does like. The only problem is, Pereira is so quick with that left hook. You don't see it coming, his hand is so low, it pops up so quick. By the time that Rountree gets his right hand over, leaving his chin exposed, Pereira will connect with that left hook. Khalil Rountree needs to be so disciplined with that right hand, keeping it up at all times, not being feinted by his eyes, because Alex Pereira loves looking to the body and then going upstairs. Again, it sounds like I'm just going at Sean Strickland right now, but that's what happened with the Strickland fight. Pereira landed a couple to the body, a few low kicks, gave Strickland the eyes, and then he came up top with that left hook. Khalil Rountree needs to be so disciplined here. Keep that right hand up at all times. Don't throw the overhand right. All his shots that come with his right hand need to be short, they need to be fast, and he needs to bring his hand back up there straight away. Again, they might have a completely different game plan, and they might have success with that game plan, but I'm just pointing out a few things that I've recognised from both Pereira and Khalil Rountree's game that could see Rountree coming through with a victory in this fight. By the way, guys, if you are enjoying this breakdown, please do subscribe. I'll also be doing a 5 things we learned video after this fight. I'll probably do it Sunday morning, so make sure you watch out for that. Anyway, the third thing that I've identified from Alex Pereira's game that Rountree needs to capitalise on is Pereira's movement. Now, if Pereira's fighting someone who cuts angles, Pereira is really good at matching those angles. This is classic glory kickboxing style, fighters moving in the phone booth, close range to each other, just cutting these angles, trying to get shots off. However, he is more than happy to move forward in straight lines and move backwards in straight lines, if that's what his opponent's doing too. If you look back at all of his UFC fights so far, he's really good at just marching opponents down to the fence and then offloading on them. So how is this relevant to what Khalil Rountree can do? Well, firstly, it's relevant to what he should definitely not do, which is move backwards in a straight line. This is where Pereira gets off his best shots, where he sees his most success, where he can just drive someone back against the fence. You saw it against Jamal Hill. You saw it against Israel Adesanya in their first fight. He'll love it if a fighter doesn't cut an angle, moves straight backwards, and he can just unload his shots. Rountree will be on the back foot at times in this fight, but he needs to make sure that he moves back and then circles out, preferably away from the left hook side. That doesn't mean that Rountree is going to negate Pereira's offense by circling off and taking these angles, but it does mean that he's not going to have his back against the fence and just have Pereira unloading on him, which is the absolute worst place to be. In terms of Rountree being the aggressor, he also needs to push Pereira back in a straight line. Rountree's really good at being the aggressor, and he absolutely has to be in this fight. I remember his fight against Anthony Smith. That fight was pretty much even up until the finish. However, when he found his rhythm, when he got going, when he put his combinations together straight in front of Anthony Smith, he was able to get him out of there. If you're a Rountree fan, you really want to see him on the front foot, putting it on Pereira, not leaving himself vulnerable to a check hook with Pereira moving backwards, which will be on, but pushing Pereira back, getting his own shots off at awkward angles, and seeing if he can get Pereira's back against the fence. This could be a real difference maker, especially if Rountree could engage in some sort of clinch. I know he said he's not going to go for takedowns, but threaten a takedown. You'll notice I've not mentioned takedowns in this video yet, just because Rountree has made it clear that he's not going for takedowns. However, with Pereira's back against the fence, if you can engage in some kind of clinch, Rountree with his Muay Thai background should have a nice clinch, getting off shorter shots, not leaving himself exposed. This could be a way in which Rountree could make the fight ugly, but also see some success. Now, I do appreciate how big an ask this is for Khalil Rountree. However, to say that he's got no chance at all, I think is just crazy. We've seen so many upsets before in the UFC. Remember, Sean Strickland was a huge underdog going into the Israel Adesanya fight, and you saw exactly how that one went. So I thought it would be good to take a look at what Pereira does best and how Rountree can deal with it. If he's able to do this, to prevent the low kick being an issue, to prevent getting hit by that left hook, and get Pereira moving backwards in straight lines, then he could have success in this fight. And it is fun to take a look at this angle to try and make the fight as competitive as possible. But realistically, how do I think this fight's going to go? Firstly, I do want to take a look at the fact that Pereira is a much bigger guy. He's 6'4", 6'5", and Khalil Rountree's 6'1", which is small for a light heavyweight. Now, this is going to prove a big factor in this fight, mainly because of the reach. A lot has been made of Khalil Rountree's oblique kicks, And for good reason, it's such a devastating weapon. However, I just can't see them being an issue for Pereira in this fight. I think he's too light on his feet, he's too good at sliding out the way, and Rountree will really need to commit to this kick if he wants to do damage. But committing with a kick like this does leave your upper half exposed, and for someone who's got longer reach, it's just such a perfect opportunity for Pereira to get off some big shots. Another thing that people are mentioning in Khalil Rountree's favour is how unorthodox a striker he is. And that's great, but I've got bad news for you, which is Pereira is an even more unorthodox striker, and he's also a much more elite striker than Khalil Rountree. So whilst it's very good and it does help, Rountree having this awkward style that might be tricky for most fighters to deal with, you're matching him against someone who's even more awkward, who throws things from even weirder angles, and it's just not a great matchup from that regard. So I see this fight starting off with Rountree being an aggressor. I could even see Pereira getting caught with a couple of shots, but he's so good at gauging the timing of his opponents. I can see him just steadily inching closer, getting off that left hook. And if I'm being totally honest, I can't really see it going longer than 2 rounds. I just think Pereira is too good offensively. Rountree lacks the size. If he does deal with the leg kick, the left hook, and pushes Pereira back in straight lines, as we said at the start of this video, he's giving himself every chance of winning. But I just think it's a bit too much for Rountree. I don't think he's proven himself against this level of opposition. And Alex Pereira is just riding that momentum wave. Sometimes momentum can do glorious things for a fighter, and it's exactly what we're seeing with Alex Pereira. Let me know what you think, if you think I've missed anything out that does give Rountree a good chance, but I'm really looking forward to this fight. I think it'll be explosive. I definitely think there'll be a knockout. But yeah, let me know what you think. Make sure you subscribe if you're not already, and I look forward to seeing you on Sunday after we've seen this fight.